Okay, let's go. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Council District 6 candidate mobility debate. We're very excited to have 6 of the candidates that are running for Council District 6 in our special election here tonight to talk about mobility and transportation. Before we get going, just a couple small things. Please make sure to mute yourself. We don't want any disturbances while the candidates are speaking. And with that, we will get started. So here's our agenda. We're going to give a little bit of context and history about mobility and transportation in Los Angeles for everyone's benefit. Then we'll go to candidate opening statements. It will be 1 minute per candidate. Please, candidates, observe the timer. It'll be very visible and it will make a sound once it's hit 1 minute. We'll then go into a series of curated questions by the Streets for All Steering Committee. And each person will have 1 minute to answer. And we're gonna, it'll just be a round robin. And whoever starts, it'll be the next question. It'll start with the next person, etc. Then we'll do about half an hour of audience Q&A. We want to hear your questions. So please go to the link at the top at any time. You can ask a question there and you can vote on other questions and we'll take the most popular. And then at the end, each candidate will get 1 minute for closing statements. So on to the context and history. So I am Michael Schneider. I'm part of the steering committee of Streets for All, and we're so excited to be doing this with you all. Wanted to give a few stats and data points that are really relevant to transportation and mobility here in Los Angeles. So first of all, it's really expensive to live the way we choose to live. Being so car-centric with so much traffic, our economy loses $19 billion a year in lost productivity just by people being stuck in traffic and not being able to get to where they need to go quickly. We have one of the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. And actually, traffic is so stressful that nighttime domestic violence can go up by up to 9% on extra heavy traffic days. So we're so stressed out by traffic that we literally beat each other up. On average, a pedestrian is killed in the city of Los Angeles once every 3 days, which is a rate that is 4 times the national average. The average bus speed in Los Angeles is now less than 11 miles per hour, which is about the same as what a scooter or an average cyclist would ride. It's especially dangerous if you're in a wheelchair. Wheelchair users have a 36% higher likelihood of being killed or seriously injured in crashes. And one of the most amazing stats to me is 2/3 of all the cars you see on the road every day in the city are going less than 5 miles. Half are going less than 3 miles. So if we just gave people safe, reliable alternatives to the car, we could change our city and make it much more multimodal. Our air isn't great either because of all the cars. And just by living in LA, we smoke up to 4 cigarettes per day just by breathing. And that includes kids, of course. The LA Basin ranks worst in worst in the nation for year-round ozone emissions and 5th worst for particle pollution. So it's a pretty polluted environment to live in. And our city has tried to become more multimodal. This is a history of the city's mobility plans. This is specific to the bike infrastructure. In 1977, there was a plan for 673 miles of bike infrastructure. 5 miles got installed between 1977 and 1996. The 1996 bike plan had 1,680 planned miles, and we installed 104. In 2010, we essentially repeated the 96 bike plan and said, we're really going to do it now. And we got another 100 miles. And since 2015, we've had the Mobility Plan 2035, which is a 20-year plan, and it includes 500 miles of bike lanes, and the city has done 37 miles to date. At this rate, it will take them 200 years to do a 20-year plan. So we really love studies, and we have the best plans, but we're not so great at actually implementing our own plans. Specific to bike lanes, the sort of Jenga puzzle the city has to go through in order to implement a bike lane is kind of insane. Number one, the pavement has to be perfect. The pavement often isn't perfect, so it's really only during repaving the street is the opportunity to put in bike lanes. A council office has to show interest, and then they set an arbitrary bar on outreach. Some council offices are fine with 1 mailer or 1 community meeting. Some want years of outreach, so it varies a lot. So LADOT spends all this energy and time making the council office happy, and then only then, if the council office signs off, the project is implemented. This is a block by block, extremely broken process that we really want to fix. This is what the mobility plan looks citywide: 500 miles of bike lanes on the left, 208 miles of bus lanes on the right planned. And as I mentioned, we've implemented 37 miles of bike lanes, as you can see on the left, and about 30 miles of bus lanes on the right. Specific to Council District 6, there's 19.1 miles of protected bike lanes planned. None have been implemented. This includes streets like Sherman Way, Woodley, Van Nuys Boulevard, Parthenia, Roscoe, and Lancashire. And there's also 25 miles of unprotected bike lanes, just normal striped bike lanes planned. A little under 6 miles have been implemented, and that includes streets that have not been implemented, like Sepulveda, Balboa, Osborne, and Paxton. Council District 6 is also really dangerous. So the city has mapped its high injury network. That's 6% of the streets in the city that account for 70% of the injuries and deaths. And as you can see in Council District 6, almost every major street is on the high injury network. Since passing the mobility plan in 2015, in Council District 6, there have been 58 pedestrian deaths, 12 cyclist deaths, and over 1,600 significant injuries. It's a very dangerous district. I'm now going to play you a quick video to talk to you about LA 25 by 25. So this was a challenge that we unleashed in 2021, mainly for people running for office in 2022. And it's a challenge for LA's leaders to give 25% of our street space back to people by 2025. What do I mean by back to people? Plazas, wider sidewalks, bike lanes and bus lanes, pedestrianized streets, safer crossings, space for street vending, stuff like that. So if any of the candidates on here are inspired, and I think one or two may have already signed up and pledged, we would welcome you to add your name to the list and do this with us. Okay, we're now going to go to candidate opening statements, and we are going to start with Marisa. So Marisa, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Streets LA, for hosting our first CD6 debate. I'm excited to be here. My name is Marisa Alcaraz. I'm a candidate for the LA City Council in District 6. I'm a single working mom, a woman of color who was born and raised in the district, lived in the Valley most of my life, Birmingham High grad, who went on to UCI and then grad school with a master's in public policy. And once I finished there, I came to City Hall, and I've been championing some of the biggest progressive policies in our city. You mentioned sidewalk vending. I helped to legalize sidewalk vending in the city, worked on guaranteed basic income, $15 minimum wage. And all the while I was doing this, I was also on public transit, going to and from the Valley to City Hall, riding the red line, the orange line, and the Metrolink. And so I'm very familiar with the Valley to City Hall, downtown connectivity issues, and I'm happy to be
here. Thank you. Next up is Isaac.
Hello, everyone. I'm Isaac, and I'm super pumped to be here. First of all, thank you so much, Streets for All, for organizing this first debate, and thank you all who are watching. This is so important. All right, so we know that LA is super famous for our traffic, and the truth is there's no solution to traffic congestion except to have more viable alternatives and options other than driving. Unfortunately, building another lane on the freeway is not going to fix the problem. Even more importantly, our most vulnerable people need better and safer ways to get around. Fixing these things will take time, and whether we decide to do things about it now or in 5, 10, 20 years, we're going to have wished we had done it a lot sooner. I don't want CD6 to be left behind. I want our district to be better now and for future generations. That's why I'm running for LA City Council District 6. Thank you. Let's do this.
Thank you. That doesn't happen often. You finished early. Imelda.
Hi, you tell me when to start.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Streets for All. I'm very excited to be here. For those of you who don't know, my name is Imelda Padilla, and I am somebody that has professionally always called herself a community organizer, regardless of how the titles have changed throughout my career. I'm somebody who has been able to do community organizing in the space of environmental justice, economic justice, youth justice, gender justice, all sorts of things within the city and county of Los Angeles. I've spent some time in my career working for very well-respected Los Angeles-based organizations, nonprofits like Pacoima Beautiful and the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy. And I have run for office before, LAUSD, because I have a very strong connection to schools, work for the county, have worked for the city, bring a lot of local general governance to the table. Excited to talk about streets.
Thank you. Marco?
Awesome, thank you. Hey everyone, my name is Marco Santana. I'm running for City Council District 6, as you all know. I'm running because the Valley has held a special place in my heart, as it's where I grew up, where I went to local schools, where I went to local churches, and it's where I worked my whole professional career. I will say, one of the things I'm planning on doing as I run is to build this knowledge I have of building coalitions together, working with constituents, and working with local nonprofits. In addition to that, putting my years of experience of housing our unhoused and bringing proven solutions to City Hall. I will say, while we do a lot of work here in the San Fernando Valley and Council District 6, it's felt as if we've been forgotten by City Hall for some time. And I'm running to change that by putting all that experience to work for you. It's no question that we have a lot of challenges we're facing, but we also have so many opportunities. I recall when we pushed Measure M in 2016, not only did we pass it with 71% of the vote, we had constituents standing up saying that they wanted better connectivity and better for our communities. And I'm here to bring that momentum from 2016 today.
Thank you. Antoinette?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Antoinette Scully, and my pronouns are she and they. I'd also like to say happy Black History Month. I'm a Van Nuys resident and currently a national organizer with the Women's Advocacy Network. I'm an experienced racial justice educator with advocacy work in environmental and disability justice. At the start of the pandemic, I helped develop the second location to NoHo Home Alliance's satellite drop-in program, as well as a field caseworker and housing coordinator. I use Metro and bike regularly. I live very close to the G or Orange Line station and dedicated bike path. We make sure that our volunteers for our campaign can use public transportation as a way to join our events and our meetups. I believe so deeply in accessible and reliable transit that I took it to take the Metro to complete my declaration of candidacy paperwork back in December. So we can make communities safer and stronger by funding safe streets, and I'm grateful to be in conversation with all of you tonight.
Thank you. And lastly, Douglas.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and talk about transportation. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in the Valley, graduated from Polytechnic High School, where I met my wife. I currently live in generational housing with my mother, my wife, and my children. So what I want to emphasize is that the city cannot grow without transportation growing with it. I want to talk a little bit more about my platform. Transportation platform, which emphasizes transportation equity on all levels, specifically on the terms of accessibility from getting from point A to point B, safety, which includes protected bike lanes and mobility, and how is it easy to use for everyone, regardless of the income levels. Public transportation is a crucial part of our city that affects every member of society. And we should put public transportation at the forefront of our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Katrina, who's going to ask our first question.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. My name is Katrina Kaiser, and I'm a member of the Streets for All board. My first question is about the High Injury Network and Vision Zero, which we just covered. In 2015, Mayor Garcetti launched Vision Zero, and its goal was to eliminate traffic deaths by 2025. 8 years in, we're actually further away from that goal than in 2015. In 2022, 312 people died on the streets of Los Angeles due to traffic violence, and many more were severely injured. Vision Zero is failing. The city has mapped its high injury network, which are the 6% of streets that account for 70% of injuries and deaths. In CD6, these streets include Victory, Van Owen, Sherman Way, Sepulveda, Roscoe, and Van Nuys Boulevard. Many of these streets are very wide and designed like racetracks with long blocks. What do you make of the city's lack of progress on Vision Zero? What changes would you make in CD6 to make Vision Zero a reality? Please list specific streets or projects that you have in mind. And we'll get started with Isaac this time.
Hello, thank you so much for your question. And my wife and I actually live right there on Sherman Way in Sepulveda, or right near the intersection. So I totally know what you're talking about. People blast through the streets and go super fast. I love the presentation in the beginning that says we have so many plans, but so little execution. We have so many examples, whether it's in different countries, whether it's the Netherlands or even in Culver City, where cities have implemented things to try this that have been more effective than Vision Zero. We can do these things. I live 1 block away from Valerio Elementary School, and in talking with the principal, they actually got rid of some of the traffic stop guards as well, and we have very little, speed bumps. People blast through the stop sign all the time. That was her biggest concern. And I see it all the time. And we can do things like make sidewalks elevated to make them more visible, to make them clearly a walking area, as well as a speed deterrent.
Thank you. Next is Imelda.
Very great question. I think that I just want to mention, if you check out my website from my 7 priorities, I've already started the conversation that I want to get working on these sort of things by, mentioning that this area definitely needs more bike lanes, protected bike lanes, as well as infrastructure for pedestrians. I have been following the Van Nuys light rail train for over 10 years now. I actually worked on a lot of the outreach related to getting people who, don't necessarily feel like engaging in these sort of conversations because maybe there's a language barrier of some sort, but doing the work to get them out to actually bring up what they would like to see. And I can assure you that I'm going to put a lot of attention to Van Nuys Boulevard, as well as the improvements that are going to be made on Sepulveda Boulevard into the west side, and also at the top portion of the district.
Thank you. Next is Marco.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in agreement. We know that there's a lot of traffic. We know that there's a lot of traffic collisions as well. Just to your point, 321 tragic deaths happened. We had 18 bicycle collisions that also resulted out of 1,700 bicycle injuries that were reported in 2021 alone. We know that our streets aren't safe, and we have to change that. I think working with the community to look at streets like Van Nuys Boulevard, which was typically known to be a cruising street back in the day, is super important. We have to take advantage of the light rail projects that are going to come there and figure out how to make these more pedestrian friendly communities, right? Let's reduce speeds, let's increase lighting, let's beautify and reinvest in those communities to make them better for businesses, as well as for the people that just walk them day in, day out.
Thanks. And next is Antoinette.
Thank you. One of the reasons why I think there's a lack of progress is you guys mentioned earlier that there are multiple steps that the city council has to go through for the city to take action, right? We have to say we want it, we have to do the studies, we have to go through the process. And then it seems like maybe we're not actually standing up and saying, please do it when we, as for example, repave the streets like they just did at Victory and Woodley. One of the things that I think would make it amazingly safe, right, would be to put in diagonal crossings, especially at Sepulveda and Sherman Way, at Van Nuys and Roscoe. Part of what's happening, right, is that traffic is going through it at whatever speed they want, and we don't have a moment for everyone to stop, let pedestrians cross all streets, and then continue traffic moving forward. And so those are the types of things that I think would be beautifully implemented in these very wide streets like Sherman Way, you said earlier. And there's enough space on both of those, Sherman Way, especially at Sepulveda, to put in protected bike lanes.
Thanks so much. Next is Douglas.
Yes, and unfortunately, I agree with all the points. Unfortunately, when it comes down to safety, it's the people that are the most marginalized and low income that are affected the most. If this was a issue that affected high income people, this would have been solved yesterday. We have many dangerous streets on CD6, Balboa, Roscoe, I could name them on and on. It's very important to emphasize what are some of the things that I can do now. My daughter goes to Vina Elementary in Arleta. People ride recklessly. I propose that every elementary school should have speed bumps. So I would advocate for funding and elevated sidewalks, protected bike lanes. One, I'll say Roscoe Boulevard. And we need to discourage people from speeding. I think the average speed on Sepulveda Boulevard is over 40 miles per hour. If we could just decrease that 40 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour, that would decrease pedestrian collisions by a significant amount. Thank you.
Thanks. And finally, Marisa.
Well, you know, we know in the Valley right now, we don't have in CD6 a lot of Vision Zero projects. We have one for Roscoe Boulevard, which is great. One of the streets you mentioned, right? It's going to have pedestrian refuge islands, leading intervals, protected turn lanes, signs and flashing beacons to go along with the new BRT going down Roscoe, which is amazing. And we know we are getting the new East San Fernando Valley Light Rail project. But again, that hasn't been accompanied with a Vision Zero project going in. So sometimes I think it's just the talking between Metro and DOT as well as street services to make sure they're on the same page. And when they're doing these big projects, that they're thinking big picture, right? For first and last mile connectivity as well, because we can't invest all this money in these great projects and then not think about the first and last mile and getting people out of their cars and actually using these major transit projects that we're working with.
Thanks. And over to Adrienne for the next question.
Thank you so much, Katrina. My name is Adrienne Hoff. I'm also on the steering committee of Streets for All. It's tough to be a bus rider in Los Angeles and CD6. Buses often don't have a dedicated bus lane and therefore move very slowly. They also frequently have very long or inconsistent headways, making it hard for people to depend on a consistent travel time, and they lack shelters at bus stops. As council member, will you seek a seat on the Metro Board? Whether or not you're on the Metro Board, how do you intend to support bus riders in the district and make the bus a more attractive option? And we are going to start with Imelda.
Well, where should I start? So I definitely want to make all of the stops a more attractive option. One of the things that I always like to bring up is the lack of amenities that are invested into these projects when they're brought on. Because for whatever reason, what we don't have is a champion at City Hall to actually push for the proper coordination that's intergovernmental that needs to happen in order for these things to be accomplished, and accomplished in a way where the community that is supposed to live, use it and enjoy it, doesn't seek the alternative of a vehicle because those amenities are lacking. I believe that shelters should have trash, charging stations, shading, light, definitely some greenery. There's a lot of work to do, but what we need to really focus on is making sure that coordination is happening.
All right, Marco.
Oh, but I would join. I would advocate to join the Metro Board. My bad.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, as an avid Metro user, I've used the orange line, the red line consistently. I've taken it to work. Back in 2016, actually, I had an electric bicycle, a pedal assist bicycle that I would take to the orange line to get to my office and just move around the city that way. I've been carless for a number of years throughout my life and only recently got a car again because of the pandemic. And being a frontline worker, working in direct services, working with the homeless, with our unhoused population, you know, I felt like it was a safer alternative for my family. So I would advocate to join the Metro Board because I truly believe in it. As being an avid user, I have my tap card right here, the newest edition. I think there's some things that we can do. We have 15% tree equity across the Council District 6. We need to grow just literally the number of trees that we have in the district. We need to increase the ambassadorship program that Metro is pushing to make sure our riders feel safer and like they can actually use it, as well as partnering with service providers to make sure that we have dedicated outreach teams along the Metro lines to make sure our unhoused population are getting the services that they require and increase our first and last mile connectivity.
Thank you. And now to Antoinette.
Thank you. Some of the opinions that have already been shared, I hold. And yes, I would seek a seat on the Metro Board. I think it's really important to have someone on the board. Like you said, many of us ride transit. The second part of that is our district has very few shaded bus stops. It has very few seats for people to sit at. You don't want to stand and wait for the bus for 45 minutes. You might take some other mode of transportation. I also believe that this is integrated into a lot of other different things, right? People don't ride Metro because they're worried that it's too scary, because we have unhoused people who also ride Metro. If we had more shelter for unhoused people, we'd have less on the buses, more people would ride transit. If the buses came more frequently than once an hour, people would use that. And it would, have you ever waited for a bus for an hour and then it blow past you because it didn't see you, because there was nowhere for you to stand in the shade comfortably? So there are lots of little tiny pieces that could be fixed immediately.
Thank you. And now to Douglas.
Yes, I have been a longtime Metro user back in the days when it was called RTD, and had to rely on it on rain or shine. So I have been splashed by water by the cars passing by while I was waiting on a bus stop. I believe I would definitely seek a seat. Currently, out of the, I believe, 9 seats on the Metro Board, only 2, Paul Krikorian, who's will be our neighbor on City 2, and one of the mayor council members in Burbank have a seat on the board, and the county supervisor, but that's a half a seat. So 2.5 out of 9. And that shows, and we see the results. Valley has always been neglected when it comes to mass transit infrastructure. Yeah, we need to do more. We need to beautify the seats, the areas around the bus stops. Certain areas, I'll tell you which area specifically, like the Panorama Mall, has some blight, which discourages people to take the bus. We need to make it more feasible and appealing to take the bus because there is great demand for it.
Thank you. Now to Marisa.
Well, like everybody else, yes, I would try to seek a seat on the Metro Board. I think right now is a really exciting time with Metro. We all mentioned already the new East Valley Light Rail line going in, as well as now in talks with the Sepulveda line, which hopefully will get a heavy rail option approved. I know that's in the works right now, but that's the ultimate plan, right? The ultimate goal to connect the Valley to the West Side, ultimately to LAX, and to really bridge all of that to make public transit more appealing for people to use. And, along with that, we already mentioned the new BRT going in on Roscoe, but that's one of the only ones we have. So we need more BRTs in the Valley. I think it makes sense, especially since we have wider streets there. Sometimes there's arguments in other areas of LA, eliminating parking, eliminating this and that. But in the Valley, we actually do have wider streets that can accommodate BRTs and protected bus bike lanes. So we move forward with it.
Thank you. And now to Isaac.
Yes, and yes, I would definitely seek a seat on the Metro Board for a couple of reasons. One being you can really affect and better the lives of so many people. Yesterday, I actually rode the bus and I was waiting for more than 15 minutes for the bus. So I think we need more buses. To Antoinette's point, when the bus did come, the 5 of us who were waiting had to run across the street to actually catch the bus. And then once we were on Sherman Way, it was really crawling due to traffic. And the big thing I want to say is that, a longer commute for the people who do ride the bus, extrapolating the time it takes to commute, it means less pay. Another huge thing is that it really means less time with family. And we all know that these are really important things and things that really break the equity gap and things that can really benefit families as well as individuals as well in our whole city. So this is something that's extremely important and that we need to make better and more attractive to the people who live in our district and city.
Thank you. I'm going to toss it over to Olga for the next question.
Hey, everybody. This is Olga. I'm the organizing director at Streets for All, and I'm going to ask you about biking. Riding a bike or scooter is dangerous in CD6. Around the district, people who depend on them to get around navigate a patchwork of unprotected bike lanes that are in the door zone of parked cars or around delivery drivers idling at curbs. The mobility plan includes 19.1 miles of protected bike lanes in CD6, but not a single mile has been built. The plan includes protected bike lanes on Sherman Way, Woodley Avenue, Van Nuys Boulevard, Parthenia Street, Roscoe Boulevard, and Lankershim Boulevard. So my question is, will you commit to implementing a network of safe, physically protected bike lanes in CD6, even if car space has to be taken to make room for them? And how will you deal with pushback from Angelenos that don't want to give up car space and could never see themselves on a bike? This question is going to start with Marco.
Thank you, Olga. One of the things I'll say, and I'll take a brief moment to add on to something that I was thinking of for the last question. I think one of the things that we can do to make our bus routes more attractive to its riders is make sure that they line up with people's needs, right? When I was at CSUN, there was countless students that had to leave class early to be able to get the bus to get back to LA. And that affected their education as well. So we need to make sure we emphasize on that. I was laughing for part of the question because as an avid bicycle user, I've been hit myself, never reported it to 911, anything like that, while riding my bicycle. And it's funny because as that happened, I was like, oh my gosh. And I look at the guy that was in the car and said, oh, are you okay? And he's like, yeah. He's like, hey, be careful next time. And he was exiting a driveway. I was like, okay, yeah. I think one of the things we need to do is push on the class 1 bicycle lanes. That is a must so that folks don't get hit like I did. We don't have 18 lives lost. And in addition to that, we need to work with our community to tell them this is coming. What are the areas you think it makes sense? And how can we implement this in a realistic rollout?
The next person will be Antoinette.
Thank you. I do commit to putting in this network of safe and protected bike lanes. And I think that dealing with this question, if we look at it as taking away from people instead of giving them something that they actually need, right? Who wants more traffic and cars on the road? Right. So if we say that the whole point of this is not to take away your car or your lanes, but to put in space for bikes and for people so that we can have safe roads, I think that's a much more equitable way to look at it. If you think about the way that culture changes, you don't wait for culture to say, yes, I want that, to put in something that you need. You put in what you need and culture comes right behind you. And so I think that this is one of those things where as an organizer, you have these conversations with your community to say, this is what we need, and this is what will get us to this. And we work together to do these things.
And up next is going to be Douglas.
Yeah, so I'll start with yes. I had been fortunate to live in the Bay Area for a few years while I was attending graduate school. And while I was living in the city of Berkeley, I realized how the bicycle infrastructure encourages people to ride bikes. In fact, I was a bike commuter for 2 years. And then I think it's short-sighted to talk about losing car parking spaces, because according to studies by the LA Department of Transportation, eliminating parking spaces in favor of protected bike lanes eliminate 10% or less of available parking. So we're not losing too many parkings, but instead we are gaining a network of bicycles. And I believe that's very important. In fact, I think we should go further. We should make it easier for people to try biking, including LA department should have bike rentals that are available to encourage people to buy bikes, and that would make it more accessible.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Marisa. Yes, we need more protected bike lanes. You know, we hardly have any in the valley. And, you know, just working in CD9 for a while now, we've done a 20-mile long bike network down there, 12 miles of which have actually gone in and have been implemented. So I'd love to bring something like that to CD6, create a bicycle network that looks to align all of our major corridors with our parks, with our schools, and our employment centers. It just makes sense. You know, I live in the Lake Balboa area. We have a huge park space, amazing area with the orange line next to it, which has a bike lane that runs like the course of the valley, but there's no bike lanes that then connect going north-south from there. And so that's something I think we need to look at. How do we do that connection, and how do we make them protected bike lanes, not just regular bike lanes? Like, as a mom, I would much prefer to take my kid on a protected bike lane than not.
Sorry, I was muted for that. Up next is going to be Isaac.
Yes, I have committed. I will commit to making safer bike lanes. It's been part of our platform. It's been on our website since day one. I love biking. I think, you know, going around living here in CD6, there are no bike lanes. And if there are, they're super unsafe. I wouldn't want to ride anywhere around here on a regular basis. It would be great to have better, more safe bike lanes. And to your point, some Angelenos, they just won't give up their car. I mean, we live in a car culture, but that's not to say that a lot of people will switch to biking, or they can switch to biking. It seems counterintuitive, but designing streets to prioritize cyclists, bikers, walkers, pedestrians is actually better for car drivers. It will get other people out of their cars. It's better for our climate. It's just something we need to do. It's going to happen whether we do it now or later. And we should start doing it now.
And finally, we're going to go to Imelda.
Okay, so you know, one of the reasons why I'm actually really interested in joining the Metro Board, it's actually something that I've been thinking about a lot, if this capacity is granted to me as a council person. So it's because I want to really champion, you know, bringing this sort of infrastructure into District 6. It's not a secret that the 70% of accidents are happening out here. So with that being said, I also wanted to mention, I kind of understood in the beginning of this this debate that there was kind of a jab at, you know, the council office could ask for a bunch of outreach and then there's no commitment to get anything done. And I just want to say that I get that. I've seen it. I recognize that there's already been a lot of outreach, a lot of good plans out there of where we can improve things. I mean, you even mentioned the streets. What I plan to do is be committed to making sure, like I mentioned earlier, we need to coordinate, we need to commit, we need to bring people together and just make things happen.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to my colleague, Josh.
Thanks, Olga. My name's Josh. I'm also on the Streets for All board, and I have a question about Van Nuys Boulevard. Van Nuys is one of the most important north-south arterials in the San Fernando Valley. It connects many of CD6's major tourist destinations, housing sites, schools, and workplaces. But traffic on Van Nuys can be brutal, and we must reimagine how people travel along this corridor, which is part of the reason, as we know, Metro is building the Valley's first light rail line up the center of the street. Van Nuys Boulevard was slated for a protected bike lane on the mobility plan, but the city and Metro are proceeding with the redesigned street without the bike lane. It's important to reconcile the needs of transit users, pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers on this vital corridor. Would you be willing to intervene and ask Metro and LADOT to implement a protected bike lane on Van Nuys in tandem with the light rail project, even if it requires taking space away from cars to make room? And we're going to start with Antoinette.
Yes. Again, we have to decide what we're prioritizing. And if we are prioritizing moving away from cars, then yes. And again, I don't want to think of it as taking away space from cars. It is making space for biking, for pedestrians, for transit. I really wish that they had looked at this plan in conjunction with a lot of the other corridor plans that are happening, especially the Sepulveda Transit Corridor, instead of separating them out one by one, right? Building a plan here, then building a plan there. Because I think that this could have been another instance where it didn't have to be a light rail at grade on the ground, right? This could have been another instance where we could have found ways to connect transit in various ways with compatible modes of technology. And so I think it's a missed opportunity, but I also think that yes, pushing for bike lanes in spaces like this is very important and like the utmost thing that we need to do.
Right, next is Douglas.
My apologies. The answer is yes. My aunt owns a small business around Nuys Boulevard. The majority of her customers do not own cars. They take the bus. So this would be a benefit for her and many small business owners that have businesses along the Nuys corridor. But let me actually mention this. This is a perfect segue why we need to do option 6 for the Sepulveda corridor. That one is going to connect. It's going to connect Westwood and UCLA. Shout out to my Bruins to the communities of Van Nuys, and connecting the Westwood corridor with the East Valley Rail is going to create network effects and it's going to create opportunities for mass transit. And that's why we need to build that. I'm going to sign a pledge, a contract. This is going to get done when I'm elected to council because it's going to be my #1 priority. And it's going to I'm sorry, let me go a little bit further. Protected lanes are my first option, not painted, protected.
Thank you. Next is Marisa.
I think it absolutely doesn't make any sense not to have a protected bike lane on Van Nuys. The whole point of us moving to this light rail and the reason we've been fighting for so long is because it makes so much sense to connect the Van Nuys orange line up to the Van Nuys Metrolink and then out into the Somar San Fernando Metrolink. And so not having a protected bike lane would hinder the plans really about connectivity and our first and last mile and pushing people to actually use this project. Like I've said, it doesn't make sense to invest in these things and then not be thinking about the first and last mile connectivity. And on top of that, we also need to be thinking about, you know, bringing in like things like Blue LA and more chargers and, you know, the scooters and bike stations, and all of that needs to be part of the whole discussion. There needs to be a Vision Zero plan and protected bike lane plan that goes with this.
Thanks. Next is Isaac.
Yes, I mean, the simple answer is yes. And for many reasons, one of them mainly being, if not this time, then when and where would we put this protected bike lane? It just makes sense. It goes along with the light rail and people commuting there. This is our opportunity to do it. So I would absolutely implement or intervene to ask Metro and LA DOT to intervene. In a lot of ways as well, we got to remember the valley where we're all from is very flat and in many ways very good for a bicycle or a cyclist to commute. And this could be a very good and common form of transportation that can be, you know, utilized. This bike lane will be utilized very well now and into the future. So this is something we need to take advantage of now while they're doing this construction. I'm sure it's just a margin, you know, to make this whole light rail project and then to add a protected bike lane seems like not too big of an ask when they're putting in the whole infrastructure anyway. And if it doesn't get done now, who knows when it will.
Thank you. Next is Imelda.
So I would definitely say that not only do I want to place a protected bike lane there, but I also want to make sure that it is walkable from all of its hinges along the corridor. It's critical that we recognize that this is a region in the district with a lot of density and a lot of people that don't necessarily always have to go very far away for work. We know that this isn't a community that uses buses to make a lot of short, inter-valley stops. So if they're gonna finally build some infrastructure where, Van Nuys can get a lot of people moving from one place to the other, we also need to make sure that it's, safe as it goes through District 6 and into other districts. And so, yes, I know that this is what we're really talking about here is how are we going to advocate to get rid of the parking, even if it means that there's plenty of parking behind a lot of these businesses. These businesses will thrive if it's walkable and rideable.
Thank you. Next is going to be Marco.
Yes, I think that bike lanes, light rail, and just transit projects in general, if done correctly, can have such a huge impact to not just the beauty of our community, but to the local small businesses that we have across Van Nuys Boulevard. So yes, and I think more than just focusing on the designated bike lanes, we also have to reimagine Van Nuys Boulevard and see how we can work with the light rail project to bring more pedestrian-friendly communities. It's a must. It's something that we have to do. So yes, on the bikes, on the bike lanes, but also again, just what else can we do with Van Nuys Boulevard now that we have this opportunity? Like Isaac said, if not now, when?
Great. I'm going to pass it back to Olga.
Thank you. So speaking of reimagining, I'm going to talk about the Sepulveda Basin for a second. So the Sepulveda Basin Vision Plan is a partnership between multiple council districts, including CD6 and city agencies, that aims to reimagine the future of the Sepulveda Basin recreation area, focusing on natural habitat, climate resiliency, recreation, and cultural spaces. The recreation area is the largest public space in the San Fernando Valley, but it's surrounded by freeways and has a ton of cut-through traffic in it. So my question is, I'd love to hear more about your vision for the Sepulveda Basin. Would you support bike trails and lanes both to the recreation area and through it? Would you support closing the recreation area to cut through traffic, which currently runs on Woodley, Burbank, and Balboa, to make it a safe space for people to enjoy the outdoors? Thanks. We're going to start with Douglas.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. So I've been going to the Parque Balboa since I was a little kid. I have nice memories of feeding the ducks. Sorry, I didn't know that was a bad thing back then. But yes, we have a lot of Sepulveda Basin has a lot of potential. We can redirect bike lanes, but more importantly, okay, hear me out, but why don't we think a little bit outside the box? The orange line should have never been a busway. It should have been a transit line since the beginning. Why don't we look into that and connect the orange line, the light rail orange line, with the Sepulveda line with the new East Rail Valley line? And what excites me about those opportunities is that people from the basin, from across the hills, are now gonna wanna come to the valley. This is not just gonna be an area where people can come at night and commute to LA. No, people from LA are gonna want to come to the valley. And the Sepulveda has so much beautiful areas that we need to showcase to everyone.
Thank you. And up next, we're going to go to Marisa.
So I think the Sepulveda Basin really needs a full master plan to figure out what we need to do with it. It's supposed to be part of the Olympics discussion for 2028. And with that could come funding and resources for the area. So I think we need to have a master plan with community input to figure out what we do with this beautiful asset that we have. It has potential for stormwater capture, for groundwater treatment. We need to talk about getting more water independence for Los Angeles. The valley could be a huge part of that. If the valley invested in that, we could, produce a third of the water that our city needs rather than pulling it from outside areas. We could invest in more cool pavement for the area, solar, native plants. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think that's why we need to create, like I said, a master plan with our community's input that could include bike lanes and other amenities.
Up next will be Isaac.
Yes, I would support bike trails and bike lanes in the Sepulveda Basin. Like Douglas, I mean, my favorite memories was when my dad used to take me to the little RC remote control airplane field, which I still like looking at whenever I'm there. But we, outdoor spaces, parks, trees, things like that are getting more rare. It's getting taken up and being eaten up. It's something that we need to cherish. And like they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. We need to act now. And there's some incredible studies that have been done. One of my old college buddies and roommates, I was living with him at the time, but he did this incredible study that was published in Time and been backed up by a lot of other studies regarding tree cover and shade and how it's a low-hanging fruit that with more tree cover and shade, it really affects the development of our children. It helps adults in terms of mental wellness. It's a huge thing we need to focus on and something that we can't take for granted and should do more about.
Great. Up next, we have Imelda.
So for this question, the only thing that I'm, willing to say I'm going to support or commit to is that we need to do the outreach. I agree that we need to have some kind of formalized plan, whether we call it a master plan or a work plan. We need a plan for this region, and we need to find the balance between the environmental protection component of its amazing potential and also the balance of people in our neighborhoods and our communities that want to utilize it for more recreational purposes. So what I want to do is be someone that can get everybody to the table. That's what coalition building is about. That's what coordinating legislation and policy and programs is about, is being able to do that. And that's what I want to do. Los Angeles recently passed Measure W. We are finally taxing ourselves to take on the infrastructure problems related to water. Not only do I plan to bring some Measure W dollars to this part of the district, but also to Sun Valley, so we can finally build out that park that the county has promised us to address thank you for the time.
All good. Up next is Marco.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with Streets for All's plan. I think we need to build on the beautiful biodiversity that the basin brings. It's a green haven. I don't know if you all know this, but we have a flock of a migration of birds that use the basin and the greenery provided by it, that land there every season. And I think we need to build on that. We need to revitalize it, revitalize the area, make it a beautiful area for families like all of us who were born and raised in this community to be able to go and take our loved ones, our families, our kids, whatever the case might be. And let's use the waterway to turn that into a bicycle superhighway, right? Like it's an easy solution to do, and it can bring so much and so much less congestion to our city.
Thank you. Up next is Antoinette.
Thank you. I will love to say that one of my favorite things about living near the Sepulveda Basin is that I get to see hawks. Like it's being able to see, as Marco was talking about the birds. I would support bike trails and lanes through the Sepulveda Basin recreational area and through it. I mean, this could be one of those places in the same way that they closed off the street at the Santa Monica Promenade, where we are able to have full streets for bikes, for electric scooters, for people walking. It's nice now, right? You walk down Woodley and you can use the protected paved bike lane, but when you get to Burbank, it is like it's a little bit dicey trying to get it off of Woodley and onto Burbank. And so I think that even at the start of that, whether it is completely getting rid of cars, it would be to put in protected bike lanes on streets like Burbank. I also think that it's a really good thing for us to look into the, oh my goodness, I've lost what it was called, the proposal for the Sepulveda Basin to push the greenery and such. Sorry, it slipped my mind.
Thank you so much. Up next, I'm passing it back to Michael.
Thank you, Olga. Sorry, guys, my second screen froze. Just give me 1 second. All right, we're gonna do it like this for right now until I fix this. Okay, so this is our last curated question, then we're gonna go to audience questions. Healthy Streets LA is our ballot measure that would require the city of Los Angeles to implement its own mobility plan 2035 whenever it repaves streets. We spent much of last year gathering over 100,000 signatures to qualify it, including nearly 3,000 signatures from CD6 constituents. It will be on the ballot in March of 2024. At City Council last year, Nury Martinez led the charge against Council adopting it outright, despite her acknowledgement that the city is moving far too slowly on the mobility plan in Vision Zero. As our campaign ramps up early next year, we will be looking to have allies on City Council speak out in support of the measure and work to get the constituents to vote for it. So our question is, will you commit to publicly supporting Healthy Streets LA at the ballot box? And do you plan to personally vote for it? And we're going to start with Marisa.
Yes, I will support the Healthy Streets LA and will be voting for it. You know, I think it's about time we move forward on implementing the mobility plan in LA. You know, we took it up in 2015. It's been 8 years and we haven't seen a lot of progress on it, especially sadly in the Valley and in CD6. So, you know, I hope to get it moving, get some of these projects fast tracked, and you have my commitment to doing that. You know, we've done a lot of it down in the districts where I'm working right now, and you know, I just want to bring that up to the Valley. It's so necessary. You know, right now, like we've said, we have this new transit line going in, we have all these plans, but other than Van Nuys and Sepulveda and Roscoe, there's not much else that's been done. So move forward.
Thank you. Over to Isaac.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your question, Michael. And yes, I will commit to publicly supporting as well as voting for it, Healthy Streets LA. And I think the main reason is because it's good at heart and it's only going to help our people. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, whether we do start implementing these things now or in 5-10 years, we're going to have wanted to have done it sooner the better. You know, the world is going to move on and this is the future. I think the vision of Healthy Streets LA is the future, and we need to start implementing that now because these things take a while to fix. These things take a while to implement and to get done. But we need to approach it with different perspectives and a different attitude and can-do attitude, and really listen to the community and what will get them to sign on to this as well, and not have so much opposition, because this is something we need, especially here in CD6. We don't want to be left behind. We want a better district now and for the future.
Thank you. Imelda.
So I will definitely commit to supporting it. I did want to say, you know, I want to everybody that has ever worked on this or has advocated for this, you know, I empathize that I know you've been advocating for these sort of things since 2015, and it just feels like these things tend to stall. I get it. City Hall, just, I don't know what goes on over there. I wish that I, you know, could have done more in years past, but if I get the opportunity to actually be in there, you're gonna, I'm gonna bring to the table the sort of attitude and a drive that I had when I was a field deputy for Panorama City before, for District 6, where I wouldn't allow departments to give me no for an answer. So I was able to get 10 community cleanups done in an 18-year time span. I like to do things. I ask the right questions. I get the right people to the table. So I'm gonna support it, and I'm gonna be the one that makes sure that Burial Street Services, DOT, engineering, utilize all opportunities to build on the plan.
Thank you. And if you can hear my 2.5-year-old throwing a tantrum behind me, I apologize. Hopefully you can't. Next up is Marco.
We can't hear, but this is a kid-friendly space, so even if we could, it's okay. One of the things I'll say is very similar. We know that City Hall, the reason we've been lacking on this is because City Hall and our elected leaders have been kicking the can down the road. Even with the motion that was introduced, all that did was extend the duration. It just kicked the can down the road, right? And that's not what we need. This is something that we've already pushed. We've only had 95 miles of the proposed 3,000 plus that fall within the Health Streets LA initiative. And the reality is that if we implement this initiative, not only is it the right thing to do, but it's going to save us money, and it's going to save us money down the line. So I don't understand the issue. We need a legal mandate, and we need it to have cleaner streets, cleaner air, less traffic congestion, and just so much more. So you have an advocate in me. Yes.
Thank you. Antoinette?
Yeah, of course, I would commit to publicly supporting it, and I would publicly vote for it. I mean, I think what you're hearing is a few of us live where where the only protected or paved bike lanes even are in CD6, and how much we all love them. And part of that is we chose to move into those places where we could be outside and use those spaces. And I think what's lacking from the commitment in CD6 is that people don't want that for everyone. They want it for Lake Balboa, but they do not want it for Sun Valley or Alita. And I think that what many of us, at least on this call, what I plan to do is to say, yes, we can have healthy streets for all of LA, because that's what equity is. It is building spaces that have sidewalks, right? This is not even just protected bike lanes or paved bike lanes. It is building sidewalks for parts of our district that don't have access to that. And we need to focus on building out the equity piece of this before we continue to say why it's not happening in city council. We know why it's not happening.
Thank you. Douglas?
Yes, I will vote on the ballot measure, but I want to go a step further, and I'm going to make a pledge that I'm going to make a resolution to introduce this to City Hall, so we don't have to wait another year, because every year counts. But please, let's dream a little bit bigger. Not only making this into bike lanes is good, but let's take this as an opportunity to beautify some of the areas in City 6. I'm talking about like Panorama City and that Montgomery ward that has been emptied for 20 years. Partnering with different departments in the city together allows us to not only repave the streets, but look into ways into doing affordable, dense, transit-oriented housing, because it's better when everything is done at the same times. Not to quote Isaac, not 5 years from now, but today. So yes, I'm so for it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're now going to move into audience questions. Just give me 1 second to get set up here. I don't have a way to show anyone a timer, but I will let you know when 1 minute is up. And if you want to use your phone or something to keep track, you can do that too. And let me make sure. Okay, let's see if this works. First question. What do you see as the relationship between transportation and housing, particularly in light of the ongoing housing crisis in Los Angeles? Do you favor upzoning in CD6 to allow denser housing, particularly near major transit hubs? And for the order here, we're going to go ahead and start with Isaac.
Got it. No, great question. Yes, no, there's definitely a relationship, and I do favor upzoning in CD6. It's obviously one way to, at least alleviate some of the housing crisis. And one thing I did mention really quickly earlier, and I did take this, one of the very interesting classes I took in college was economics of race in the US, but it really highlighted the fact that longer commutes do equal less pay once extrapolated out. And even more than that, like I mentioned earlier, it also means less time with family. These are bad cycles that need to be broken, and they can be broken with things like more housing and being closer to your work, or being closer to public transportation that makes your commute much better. These are hugely important things that can transfer in generations and families, and just increase the quality of life. So these things, I favor anything that's for people and for bettering people's lives, all people in our district and city.
Thank you. Over to you, Imelda.
Hi, so I definitely think that it's absolutely embedded together. As we build it together, as we talk about it, we need to talk about it together. And yes, I would definitely consider upzoning in the locations where it's appropriate. I just want to also bring up that Council District 6 has 2 Metrolink stations, the Antelope Valley, as well as one linked to Ventura. We have the high-speed rail also coming. It's not just the Metro light rail. and the bus, the bus lanes, there's a lot of transportation. We really are the overall union station of the Valley. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of projects to pay attention to, and we definitely need to coordinate in ways where we also talk about housing. I could just in my mind think of at least 2 to 3 places where we can start. So, I look forward to being involved in the process and building.
Thank you. Marco.
Yes, I want to go back to something that was mentioned by Antoinette about fighting the systemic inequities that we face. For so long, I've said, why can't low-income families, why can't low-income households have nice things? We have this major transit line that's coming. We need to take advantage of this. That's without a question. We need to upzone, we need to densify in those areas. And we need to look at having, smart, we need to build responsibly, right? We need to develop responsibly along that line. So yes to upzoning, we need to revitalize our communities, but we need to make sure that we're doing it in an intellectual manner, right? Like, let's push for local preference so that folks that live there or live around there can have first dibs so that we're not displacing communities. We all want to beautify and revitalize our communities because it's absolutely needed. Housing and homelessness is our #1 issue. I know this firsthand, but we need to make sure that we're also not displacing those low and middle income families that are there as we try to beautify our communities.
Thank you. Next up, Antoinette.
Yes, I think one of the relationships that I see between transportation and housing is how we disenfranchise Black and Brown people, especially in District 6. And I think that, yes, upzoning is a great idea. And I agree with Marco that we shouldn't push out people who live here by building nicer houses and gentrifying the spaces. I also believe that one of the best things that we could do is we've done all these studies, we continue to be in conversation with people. People are asking for more transit, people are asking for more affordable housing. And I think that if building those two things in tandem, looking at the problem as holistic and not one or the other, is going to get us to the solutions a lot better than otherwise.
Thank you. Douglas?
Yes, and I will make a pledge that I will have more affordable mass transit oriented on Van Nuys Boulevard. I could think of examples of Montgomery Ward that's been abandoned for 20 years. The Deardens where my brother got laid off like 5 or 6 years ago and it's rotting. Those are perfect places where you can build affordable mass transit housing now. And if as city council, if I have with a flip of a thing like Thanos and make it happen, it's gonna happen. But the other thing I really want to mention is that, yes, we don't want to displace the people that live there, and that the majority of trips take 3 to 5 miles or take 20 to 30 minutes by car. If we had mass housing denser in areas where it's mass transit is available, a lot of those trips that are by car would be by scooters, would be by bicycles, would be by bus. So it's just an overall net gain for everyone. So yes, it's a no-brainer.
Thank you. Marisa?
I think upzoning may make sense in certain areas. I think we need to obviously look at our community plans because, lots of thought goes into all of those in terms of the zoning and what's allowed. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to put 20-story building in a R1 area, but I think that if it's an affordable housing project or workforce PSH and it's done with prevailing wage or PLA attached to it, it makes sense to consider that, especially like we said, along Van Nuys corridor where we're having these new investments and we already have some existing public transportation infrastructure. I think that would make sense. And, we'll just have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Okay, I see it.
You guys, I'm going to suggest we go to 45 seconds just because we have a lot of audience questions and that way we can get through more. So here's the next one. From Colin, going forward, will you commit to forego fundraising money from real estate, lobbyists, and police interests? And this is going to go to Isaac first. 45 seconds.
Definitely. We have already forgone, and I'm super proud to say that we're a grassroots clean money campaign made of incredible volunteers that money couldn't buy. We intend to do this the right way with integrity. And yes, we commit to not taking money from any of those people. I wouldn't be doing this if I, to be a puppet or to do anything like that. I'm doing this because I truly care and I want to do better in a way that's authentic and true, and that everyone, our community can be proud of, that we can get behind in a way that listens to the people who actually live here, not people who are just interested in their own gain, whether that's professionally or financially. I have no interest in that.
Thank you. Imelda?
So my understanding is that lobbyists can't donate starting January 1st. So I don't think that's going to happen. And I just want to mention that when you look at we finally have our first report related to our finances. I like to just mention that my funding comes from a whole host of people from a lot of different places. And that is because of the work that I've done over the years related to how I mentioned in the beginning: environmental justice, economic justice, gender justice, youth development. Because of that large network is why I was able to fund the first part of my campaign thus far, because of the people that have seen my work and believed in me.
Thank you. Marco?
Yes, I mean, not only am I not taking money from these interest groups, I've already refunded money that's come to me via these interest groups. So yes, I've been doing it. I've done it. We just last week, earlier this week, we hit our 385th individual donation. Talking about grassroots campaign, I love it because that's what this is. We've hit so many people that believe in this movement, that believe in my candidacy. I've already surpassed the 100 in-district matching funds number as well. So this is a people-powered campaign. I've been given the money and I've already given it back. So I've been doing it, and I'm going to continue to do it and just rely on the power of the people.
Thank you. Antoinette?
Yes, I've already pledged to do this. One of the reasons why we were supported by the Feel the Burn SFE is because we took this pledge early on. We're also a people-powered campaign and grassroots. And I think that I didn't want to say this earlier, but we know why a lot of this housing stuff hasn't actually been implemented, why this bike lane hasn't been implemented, is because the people before us took special interest funding and couldn't vote for this because those were their special interests. And so my special interests are the people. And so that is why I've already pledged not to take funding from police unions, lobbyists, and real estate. Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas?
Yes, I take that pledge. But I think that's not sufficient. Like, as you said, there's many loopholes around that way. So I think a stronger question would be, if in the event that somebody flags one of your donations, do you pledge to give it back? I would have wished somebody would have asked that question. But yes, our network is a grassroots campaign. The majority of my donors have been family members, friends and family. And the majority of the people that work for me are interns, college students who are unpaid and just working it because they believe in what I'm trying to accomplish in CD6. Yeah, the city council overall, not just here in the valley, but on the other side of the hills, has been under the influence of big. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Marisa.
I'll keep it short and sweet. No, we're not taking money from lobbyists or the public safety groups, and abiding by the ethics laws. We have pretty extensive ethics laws here in the city. So abiding by that, most of my money, like the rest of them, comes from family, friends, people I know living in the valley for most of my life, and union labor support.
All right, we're going to go to 30 seconds. Try to get through as many of these as possible. We still need to give you time for your closing statements. Next question. Will you help ensure that the Sepulveda transit corridor will be a heavy rail and not a monorail? And we're going to start with Isaac again.
Sure, I'll go again. I would definitely support heavy rail over monorail. I think when you're putting in all that infrastructure, just to have a monorail, it just doesn't make too much sense at this day and age. It's just much much more efficient, and you can do so much more, whether that's using electricity and not diesel, things like that. We need to use more passenger rail as well as freight and figure that out, because it's just so much more efficient. It's the way of the future, and we need to utilize it more. Thank you.
Thank you. Imelda?
I will help and help ensure that the Sepulveda Transit Corridor is heavy rail and not a monorail. And I will be respectful to my neighbors in the conversation in making sure that this happens. I know that there is a lot of people that just don't want to see anything happen, and we're going to build something. And I definitely think that while we make this investment, it should be something that is going to be worth our while in terms of the money that we're going to be putting into this.
Thank
and
you.
Really thinking long term.
Thank you. Marco?
Connectivity.
Yes, I'm in favor of heavy rail. I think if we wanted to look at a monorail system, we should have done it way back when they were expanding the 405 freeway, which is not what we want. But I am in favor of heavy rail.
Antoinette?
Yes, I'm in favor of heavy rail, and I really like the option 6 alternative where it goes down Van Nuys instead of Sepulveda. I grew up near Orlando, so like monorails are fun, but this is not the project for that. It's infeasible for this, and we should stick to the technology we have.
Thank you. Douglas?
Yes, I'm in charge of heavy monorail. The fact that we're even considering monorail, to be honest, it's an insult and a joke. Why are we even talking about it? This shouldn't ever even been brought up as a viable option to begin with. I used to commute from UCLA to the Valley, so I understand how the 405 stressful it is, and I would have benefited from a heavy rail back in the day. So yes, I pledge that the monorail is not going to happen. I make that promise, even if I have to go on the 405 and personally block it.
Okay, Marisa?
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. We need to have a heavy rail option. I think we all know that looking at the Green Line and some of the at-grade rail that we've done in the city, that it's not as successful as when we really invest in the heavy rail. So, in my support.
Okay. Next question. What are your opinions on parking minimums and how it relates to affordability in new developments? And this time we'll start with Marco.
Ooh, almost caught me off guard. I'm in favor of parking minimums, but I think we have to be realistic of the people, right? Council District 6 is a lot of working class families. Growing up, I had 8 people in a household. Everyone drove their own cars. We have to be smart as we transition to parking minimums to make sure that low-income families that are driving somewhere who still haven't gotten comfortable with transit have the ability to still drive to work so that their income isn't affected. But yes, I'm in favor of doing it in a smart manner.
Thank you. Antoinette?
Yeah, my understanding is that parking minimums brings up the cost of affordable housing. And it also, I've heard it used even in my Balboa Neighborhood Council as a way to shut down affordable housing by saying that's not enough cars, we need more cars. So at this moment, pending more research, I'm actually against the parking minimums.
Douglas?
Yes, I'm in favor of eliminating or lowering parking minimums whenever possible. As other candidates mentioned, it has to do with affordable housing. That's one of the main cost drivers. But look at the city of San Jose. The city of San Jose was one of the first cities to eliminate parking minimums as a whole city. We got to look in ways how we can do that in LA. And if we can't do it because we don't have enough support, I would advocate as much as I can on my behalf.
Thank you. Marisa?
I think, again, it's one of those case-by-case basis. If we're building it near heavy rail and transportation where that's going to be used by the people who are going to live there, then yes, it makes sense in order for us to build more units and to do it cost efficiently.
Okay. Isaac?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a complicated issue. Like the other candidates have said, it does raise the cost of affordable housing. This is one of those issues that as council member, I would need to, listen to the people who are closest to the problem and weigh the pros and cons. This is something that I would want to educate myself more on and surround myself with experts on the subject and really listen to different studies that have been done and different scenarios that could happen.
Thank you.
Yep.
Imelda.
So I believe that if we are going to build housing near public transit, we can definitely get rid of the parking minimums. Because you have that alternative mode, and if people move in there, they tend to know what their options are and what they're getting into. But I would also say, there's definitely a way where we can continue to have parking minimums and have it not affect the construction of affordable housing. To me, the inability to find ways to make everyone happy.
Thank you. All right, we're going to speed through one last questions and then go to closing statement. How would you expand the free Metro plan from K through 12 to college students throughout Los Angeles? And how committed are you to create free Metro for all? And when they say Metro, I'm pretty sure they mean buses, trains, and perhaps bike share. For this one, we'll start with Marisa.
So I was part of the team that brought universal basic mobility to South LA. It offered $150 a month for a year to 2,000 low-income participants, and it brought in, bike lanes, Blue Car LA, LA Now, EV chargers, all these things that are great. I'd love to bring something similar like that up to the Valley, and yes, committed to offering free public transit to K through 12 and college students in LA.
Thank you. Isaac?
Yes, I'm all for that. In fact, yesterday when I took the bus, the fare machine wasn't working. Everyone was riding for free anyway. But we need this for our college students, for our high school students, younger. They are the next generation and their education is paramount. It's priority. It's something that the budget definitely can afford and allow for. I understand that even just the police security budget for the Metro is greater than the revenue itself. So these are things that we need to think about for the future generation, for the better of our district, our city.
Thank you. Imelda.
This question stole my closing statement. What I wanted to say was that we know, because it's been reported, that only 6% of the Metro budget comes in from the money that ridership produces. So I think that's pennies, and therefore I think all of Metro should be free for everyone, not just K through 12, but for everyone. 6% of the budget, we can find ways to supplement that 6% so that it makes all of public transit more appealable to everyone.
Thank you. Marco.
Yes, and we know that enforcement on this is not equitable. It largely marginalizes Black and brown people. Let's get rid of the fares. Let's have free fare for all. Let's be smart at how we approach this, but yes, free fares for everyone. But I still love my tap card.
Thank you. Antoinette?
I love all these people who want to abolish the Metro fares. Like, yes, let's get rid of Metro fares. The Metro police contract is the same as the fare revenue. Let's get Metro out of, or let's get the police out of Metro. And I also want to say that I do think that it's really great that we have this free kid Metro system policy, but I think it should be expanded to all kids, not just to public school kids, just personally. And so, yes, free Metro for all.
Thank you. Douglas.
So yeah, I have a personal story. When I was a student at LA Mission College, they implemented free or very reduced fare for all community college students. And immediately that next semester, you can see that user rates went up. As everyone else said, from an economic standpoint, we have the Measure M money. There is funds to make Metro free or as a penny or whatever you want to call it. So why not do it? It makes fiscal sense and it's gonna make everyone happy. So it's a win-win-win.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to closing statements now. And we're gonna start with Isaac, 1 minute.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I've been actually coming to you live from my home in Van Nuys. I know you can't tell. It's where my wife and I live with our dog Belly. Van Nuys CD6 is also where growing up, my parents had their business called California Water Conservation Company. And I've always thought it was really cool that my parents cared and had the foresight to see years ago that toilets were wasting way too much water, and newer, more efficient toilets like the ones you see now would save a lot of water in the future. I'm running for LA CD6 because, like my parents saw the need to save water then, I can see that we need to act now with real changes so that our district will be better now and in the future. This election is super crucial, and the time is now to reset and make meaningful changes. I believe we need more everyday people, residents like me, not in the political world, to step up and strengthen our democracy and bring a different perspective and attitude to get things done. Let's regain the trust of our community and use local government for the good of all people in our district and the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Over to you, Imelda.
Well, I just want to close by saying thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun talking about things related to the built environment. That's the term that I refer to these concepts as on my website. So if you like what I talked about, and if you want to learn more, please check out my website at imeldapadilla.com and on social media. Would love to have anybody, visit us at our campaign office. Yeah, I hope I'm able to earn your support. Thank you again for having me. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you. Marco.
Awesome. Thank you all for having this. I think it's clear from the candidates that are here, from the questions that were given from the folks in the Zoom community. I think it's clear that we need to be smart in how we implement our infrastructure and mobility needs for the people of this district and for the people of the city of LA. It's absolutely apparent. Transportation is key to our lives for so many reasons, not just due to mobility, not just due to the increase in local businesses that it'll give, but just our quality of life, right? And so it's time that we have a leader that will step up and make sure that our constituents in Council District 6 and the city of Los Angeles not only survive, but thrive. And I'm looking to do that for you all.
Thank you. Antoinette.
Thank you so much for having all of us here tonight. And the biggest takeaway from this, right, is that you shouldn't have to feel like you need a car to get around LA. I had the privilege to move to an apartment where I could use my bike lane and be closer to the metro. I made the conscious decision to prioritize buses and biking over my car, and I was able to do that because of the transit system in my part of the district. But many can't make that change, and we need to expand public transit in ways that are equitable for everyone. My candidacy is nothing but for the people. The best way to lead is to be the model of the expectations. As a current transit rider, it's no brainer to me to do everything in my power to expand accessible transit and safer streets for all Angelenos. You can connect with me and my campaign at AntoinetteForLA.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas?
Yes, I want to thank all of Streets for All for inviting us. Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge Pastor Thomas, who's here, and because of the city, how hard it is to collect the signatures and how the level playing field is not there. I want to acknowledge that this has not been a fair fight. But yeah, and so I'm somebody that's bringing my life experience, a fresh new perspective, and I'm running as for city council because of that. I have new ideas, not because I have city hall political experience. And I just want to acknowledge that in the chat, some people have mentioned that certain candidates have taken lobbyist money or from their spouses, so they can clarify that. I would like that. But more importantly, I want to talk about the future of the Valley, where our kids are growing up and where our grandchildren are going to live, and how we can make this a better community, transit friendly, and beautify our communities and make people proud that they're from the Valley, and because we're all repping the 818.
Thank you. Marisa.
Yes, repping the 818 over here, all of us. Thank you to Streets for All again for hosting this, and all the candidates for participating. I think we all pledged to support mobility and improving things in CD6 and for the city. I have experience doing this and delivering. you know, between my FIG project, the Rail to River project, over 100 million in streetscape projects, safe routes to school, 11 in South LA, UBM, which I mentioned. All of these projects are things that I've worked on and I can deliver on, and I have a track record. I have experience. So I just really want to bring that experience, that knowledge to CD6, where I grew up, born and raised, where my family lives, where I'm raising my daughter, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Well, I just want to thank everybody. I know it's not easy to do this, especially in 30-second or 60-second sound bites. So we're really grateful that everyone is here. And thank you to the audience. I think we had close to 200 people doing this, including people that were live tweeting and all sorts of fun stuff. And lastly, before we say goodnight, just wanted to say up next for us next week, we're excited to have County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath on Streets for All Happy Hour via Zoom, and that will be February 8th at 5 p.m. So with that, I just saw a question in the chat. Will the video be posted? Yes, it will. It'll be on our YouTube channel. And I just want to say thank you again for attending. Thank you to the candidates for coming. And we wish everybody a good night. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.